Good afternoon. A humble welcome to all the panelists and the participants to the webinar on Union Budget 2023. I'm Pratichi Avinash, Manager Marketing at R&M India. I request you all for your active participation throughout the webinar. You can share your questions, if any, in the Q&A box, which will be taken up towards the end. I hope this session will be beneficial to all the attendees. I would now like to hand over to Mr. UN Marwa, Chairman R&M India, for the welcome note. Sir, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. R&M India is a consulting firm operating in Delhi for 75 years, spanning 3 generations. We have branches in Gurgaon, Bangalore, Raipur, and London, and a branch soon in Bombay. The Union Budget was announced in February 23 first. There were industry's expectations from the budget. Some, of course, were fulfilled, and some remained unattended. In this webinar, we will address the expectations and outcomes of the Union Budget in the textile, automobile, and hospitality industry, along with the amendments and additions of the direct tax, indirect tax, and corporate law. Before the commencement of this session, I would like to introduce and convey my gratitude to all the panelists who have joined us to share their experience and expertise. I would like to welcome Madhusudan Bagadia. Madhusudan ji is the Chairman and Managing Director of Filatex India, a listed company which is one of the pioneers in manufacturing monofilament yarn for zippers, toothbrush, Velcro, magic fasteners, and forming fabrics, having its factories in Noida and Dadar Nagar Haveli. All these products are import substitutes and are helping the country in saving precious foreign exchange. The company, under his leadership and able guidance, is achieving phenomenal results, creating value for its shareholders. Welcome, Madhusudan ji. Mr. Nishant Arya. He is the Vice Chairman of the JBM Group, who has enriched with education from the Bradford University, UK, London School of Economics, and has been instrumental in transforming the group since 2010. He has worked in various multinational companies in Europe and Japan for 2 years, which gave him exposure to global processes and work culture. He was able to incorporate his learnings while developing JBM's philosophy and DNA. Under Nishant's stewardship, JBM Auto has been recognized amongst the elite set of the 10 greatest value creators in the Fortune 500 companies. Chandar Balji, he's the CMD and founder of the Royal Orchid Hotels Group, again a listed company, which started his journey in 1973. An alumni of IIM and coming from a famous hotelier family in Simla, he always had a natural affinity to hospitality. The first flagship hotel, Royal Orchid, was launched in 2001 in Bangalore. Now they have 80 plus properties operating under their brands of Royal Orchid, Central Park, and Regenta Suites at various business destination leisure resorts. Mr. C.K. Balji, as founder, has seen many highs and lows during his journey, but each low has made him stronger and increased his will to carry on and make a name for himself. We have Sumit Singh. He's a partner at Direct Tax a chartered accountant, having 16 years of extensive experience in providing advisory in restructuring, deal advisory, and DTAA analysis, and has represented various tax issues. He was with the Big Four prior to joining R&M. Nitish Sharma is a partner in direct tax, is an advocate, and has over 22 years of experience in indirect tax and WTO laws advisory, compliance, and consultancy with the Big Four before joining R&M. He has advised large multinational and Indian companies in various sectors on the structure of transactions, supply chains, business processes to optimize indirect tax incidents. He has assisted diversified conglomerates in setting up Indian operations and restructuring their business operations. Jagriti Seth is a chartered accountant and a lawyer, having 25 years of experience, having worked for large business houses in various sectors such as healthcare, pharma, sugar, infrastructure, real estate, financial markets, and various other sectors. She has significant experience in structuring and implementing transactions. Jagriti specializes in corporate restructuring, mergers, amalgamations, demergers, valuations and due diligence, private equity deals and acquisitions, corporate laws and exchange control laws, and all matters relating to BIFR. Lastly, I would like to introduce our moderator for today's session, Raghu Marwa, Managing Partner and CEO, R&M India. A qualified CA, he joined the R&M team after gaining experience at the Big Four. He comes with an experience of 20 years and specializes in advising and structuring businesses overseas for Indian corporates, build India strategies for foreign clients, cross-border holdings, merger and acquisitions. I hope this session will be interactive and enlightening for all participants. I would like now to hand it over to Raghu for opening the session. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so much for your kind words and welcome to all once again. I would like to start the session by quoting from the Bhagavad Gita, which says, "Knowledge is the key of knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed." With those words, I hope that this knowledge session is accepted by all, and each of you can be enriched by the knowledge that that all the esteemed panelists are going to be sharing with you today. I think the budget, a lot of us may have heard, there's a lot of hoobra which goes around the budget in India. But we first like to start with Bhagedia Saab, which is going to talk to us about the textile industry, and just as a context, even prior to the budget, I'd like to set the context that there have been various PLI schemes for the textiles which have been introduced. The Honorable Minister of Textile, Mr. Piyush Goyal, has announced that he wants to set up various textile hubs similar to the one at Tirupur. The Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu had recently said that he's establishing Chennai as a textile city. So obviously textile seems to be very much in the news, and a lot of people are directly and indirectly connected with it. It's a huge industry, not only in India, with all over the world. So with those words of introduction, Madhusudanji, my first question to you is, what, as per you, is the impact of the budget on your industry, namely the polyester yarn manufacturing sector? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mahavaji. See, in this budget, primarily there is nothing extraordinary for the textiles. There are 2-3 small things that they have done. They have increased the funds allotment for ROSTL, for RODTP, and also some extra allotment for amended technological upgradation fund scheme. Other than that, directly the budget is not talking about textiles. But yes, the capital outlay of the government, 10 lakh crores, and other capital spending by the government, and relief to the middle income group in income tax would give them extra money to spend, and that could lead to be more demand for textiles. So that could be an indirect positive for the industry. That is what I feel. Other than that, see, now budget, actually there is not much for the industry. See, budget talks about 2 things directly related to the industry. That is some custom duty they can tinker, but now the custom duties are already at a very low threshold. So there is very little for them, the government, to tinker about it. Then see, GST is out of the purview of the budget, where the changes can make a little difference. And the second point is the corporate tax. But corporate tax already government has reduced quite a bit. I don't think there is much they can do about it. They have not increased or put some long-term capital tax. That is a positive, because that would have dampened the stock market and indirectly affected fundraising by the industry people. So that they have not done, which is indirectly a positive thing. See, textile basically is a very important industry for India. It's the most job creating industry, and that too at a very low level of capital infusion. So almost it is more than 10 to 50 times than other industries, the work to capital ratios. And in India, see, the focus of the textile was always on the natural fibers. But for last few years, I think the government has changed their focus. But that too, they are doing it too slow. Textile industry needs a big overhaul. Now, cotton is basically for rich men. And also, if there are a lot of studies which shows that even for environment, the cotton is not so good, because the kind of power, manpower, and the water needed to produce a cotton shirt compared to a man-made shirt is very huge. So impact on the environment by natural fiber is much more. The only problem with the man-made is that it is not biodegradable. So for that, the industry is working towards sustainability, recycling. We as a company are also working for recycling project, and all over the world things are going on. So the future is bright, but I think the government needs to give a big overall for this industry and change their mindset. So there's certain points I'd like to highlight which we feel that the government should do to boost this industry. This can create a lot of jobs, and the problem of unemployment can be addressed to a larger extent. And now with China plus one thing going on, this is the right time to do it, because people want to shift base out of China, and India being the second largest producer of textile, people are looking at it to take up that demand. Now it's up to the Indian entrepreneurs and the help of the government, they can fulfill that. So there are certain points I'd just like to mention. One is there's an inverted GST right now also from our raw materials, starting from petrochemicals is 18%, then yarn is 12%, fabric is 5%. Then in garment, there are 2 slabs. Below 1,000, I think is 5%, above 1,000 is 12%. So it needs to be harmonized at whatever level. This creates a lot of problems of accumulation and then litigations and then getting the money back, which is a dampening. Plus the GST paid on capital goods becomes an investment. So that also becomes a cost. The second point is the high cost of power. See, this industry cannot bear such high costs of power. Today, the power costs are touching almost 9 rupees a unit. So there should be some incentive given, or the power should be given at a little subsidized rate. This 9 rupees actually is not a generation cost. There are a lot of freebies given by the government or cheap power given by the government. That is all loaded on the industry. That is why it becomes so costly. Otherwise, on the exchange, you can buy for 3.5, 4 rupees a unit, but then the government would lot of things on that. So that is one thing. Then custom duty on raw materials to be rationalized. See, today custom duty on raw material of petrochemical is 5%, and even on yarn is 5%. Then fabric and garment it is 20%. So there the government needs to create, either reduce it on the petrochemicals little bit so that the yarn producers also get some protection. So that is one thing. The PLI scheme which they have given is not so industry oriented. I think a lot of people who have registered are now having a rethought whether they should go with it, because the value addition required and the turnover required is very high. If you are putting 100 crores, then you need to have a turnover of 200 crores. And then every subsequent year, you need to increase it by 25%, which looks a little unrealistic thing. Then on the sustainability initiative, the government, we feel, should come out with some incentives and subsidies so that people are encouraged to take up such ventures to where the recycling of the waste of garments can be done, whether it's cotton or polyester or anything. There is no such scheme as of now. Then textile parks, I think the government is looking at it, but see, the focus is on MMF. Now the growth in textile is bound to come from MMF. Last 10 years, there is a study that almost 95% of the growth has come from man-made in the world, because the cotton crop cannot increase now, and the countries don't have cultivable land to give it to cotton. People are struggling for the food. So that's the thing. So any incremental demand is going to come from man-made. And so this man-made also, yarn should also be made a part of these mega textile park that will help the garment and the fabric producers also, because they will have the suppliers next door. And in this mega textile park, the government should have a common ETP and steams. Steam also should be a common thing which should be sold, but generated by government and then distributed like power. And then there is lastly a change in labor laws is needed. So these are the major points which we request the government should focus. And if they do so, I think there's a very bright future for textiles. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madhusudanji. I think that was a very, very elaborate exposition about, where the industry is, as well as, some of the points you raised regarding power cost, inverted duty structure, PLI, sustainability. I think that would, some of these issues are across the industry, not only specific to textile. A lot of other industries may also be facing similar challenges.
Right.
You've raised some very valid questions. Just one last question in terms of, obviously there are lots of government policies and interactions have increased. Do you think that there is anything specific that, to promote the goodwill of the textile industry? I think in the past they were talking about labor laws as well, that some, simplification in terms of hire and fire. Do you think those things, because obviously textile industry is a little labor intensive, so do you think that is something also that you would like to see in the future?
I think yes, some flexibility should be given. I don't say we should be allowed to fire at will, but maybe some flexibility, like if you 1% or 0.1%, something flexibility should be given. And second is some flexibility in the working hours, because there are a lot of people who migrate and do the work, and they are willing to do 12 hours of job. But as per the law, you cannot deploy them for 12 hours. And then they are idle because they are living alone. The workers, so I am talking about, not the white collar job. So their government should allow, I think, at least 10 hours of working or something, so that the need for workers is also reduced, and they can also make more money because their living expenses and everything remains same, and their earnings will go up.
Absolutely. I think that's a very well taken point that, in India, we may not be ready for some of the Western country norms of hire and fire. So we need to be a little protective about our poor labor force. But I think some of the points that you've raised are, very well taken, that it can be a win-win for both industry as well as for the wider labor force. Thank you so much, Madhusudan ji. That we'd like to shift gears to Nishant Arya ji, who has so kindly, even though he's in Singapore, but he has found time to join us from Singapore. I think we can see him in the car. Nishant, if you can hear me.
Yeah. Hi, Raghu. Glad to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Nishanji, to take time out. I know it's a busy day for you. So I think we'll jump straight into green mobility, which is, something that you're obviously very passionate about. So the green growth was obviously one of the first 7 priorities of the budget speech given by Honorable Mrs. Sitaraman. This must be very heartening for you. What is your first reaction to the budget?
No, I think budget has been phenomenal in terms of the import of battery packs, which was going to attract a very high GST and taxation import duty from April next year. So has been pushed out, which gives more time to the industry to adapt. Otherwise, unnecessarily, where we see that on one side the government is giving subsidy, intending to see that how the prices are going down, they would have gone northwards when this would have happened, which would have been counterproductive for the whole industry and would have actually delayed the investment plans for many companies at this point. Because in India, there is no cell manufacturer per se across all segments of batteries and vehicle segments, which is the primary user of these batteries today. So that's a great initiative. Secondly, I feel that the move with respect to digitization has been very helpful. How companies are able to see that digitization becomes a focus area, and in MSMEs or in the larger corporates, they get tremendous benefits with this. And not only the budget, I think the actions taken with respect to PLI and even the FAME scheme, which is extended by about 5,000 crores for the coming financial year up to March 24. And it will give a huge boost to the industry, even though the FAME scheme is acting as a catalyst. But I think that creating that awareness and acting as a catalyst is so important at this juncture for people to be able to adopt these vehicles and make it a way of life. So that is going to definitely transition us from a vehicle which we could buy and we would want to buy. So I think that choice which people make from the need which they see from just the price perspective, I think for every single buyer, especially in electric buses, 3-wheelers, and electric taxis, where there's a commercial implication, because as the asset utilization goes higher in electric mobility, the total cost of ownership drops substantially. So that is something which drives the cost down, increasing the volumes, and the whole industry scales up substantially. So it's a chicken and egg, whether the cost will come down first or the kind of scale and size would grow at the same time. So I think that is something which gets very well balanced with this.
Absolutely, all very valid points, and that actually takes me to the next point of India being a global destination or a player for manufacturing and the R&D and the technology on green mobility. Do you think that India can play that pivotal role?
So I think definitely India has it in it for becoming the EV capital of the world. And for becoming the EV capital of the world, you need the whole supply chain to be in place. You need the whole ecosystem to operate. So whether we look at charging infrastructure or the kind of investments coming from OEMs, which acts as a mother plant to multiple tier ones, different technology players setting up their basis for not only the Asia Pacific, but the global supply chains in India. And especially after China plus one strategy, I think that plays out extremely well for many companies who want to de-risk themselves. And with a clear roadmap that by 2030, we'll be looking at 30% And I personally believe, especially in the electric commercial vehicle space and public transport space would look at even more than 50% by 2030, as the uh, dynamics work out to be much better today. And we are not talking about low emission here, we are talking about zero emission. And even when we are moving to the hydrogen technology, I think fuel cell electric vehicles would become very prevalent then. And the base technology will be electric, and fuel cell will sit on top of it. So it will be the best of both worlds in terms of range and the technology platform. On the other hand, when we see in electric vehicles, software is actually more important, or even though equally important as hardware. So which we are blessed with in our country, the kind of bandwidth and know-how which is available. So whether we look at vehicle management system, battery management system, charging management system, the vehicle control unit, DC-DC converters, motors. So today, 95% plus problems we resolve through remote diagnostics. I generate about 2.5 million data points for every bus every single day. So with the AI IoT solutions which we have, and I think that is not something which only we are doing, many companies are doing it. The only difference is more or less, but I think such a role which is being played by the IT sector, the kind of computer science and the big data backup which we have, and the focus on digitization even expedites and accelerates this even more. On the other hand, when we look at the industry, we see that multiple startups coming in are increasing the agility and the frugal mindset which we all have, keeping us on our toes. And that makes us extremely competitive. And the extreme competitiveness ensures that we are able to cater to the global market, as the customers have become very demanding. And demanding customers really ensure that we perform to our best. And that's what the global market is looking for. When we get scale in domestic market and the kind of technology development which is there, I think the global market really relishes that kind of a play from players like us in India, who are able to cater to their requirements, and time to market goes down, because a customer in India demands everything on a yesterday basis. So therefore, if the robustness of the product and technology is not there, then that doesn't happen. And that's where we come in with our focus on R&D, engineering and technology, how technology can drive value in the current structure. And most of the states in India are creating healthy competition by inviting players to come and see that how investments can be made, how things can be developed, and they're willing to offer other things because they all understand the role EVs will play tomorrow, and it's something to stay, not to transition from. So that's how I look at it, and that will create huge opportunities for skilling, reskilling people, and making them employable. And that also brings in the roadmap around renewable energy, when we're looking at about 500 gigawatt of renewable energy coming in. Then on the other hand, electric vehicles coming in. So how we can generate green and consume green. So I think multiple different policy frameworks get integrated as well.
That's really helpful. I think a big thumbs up from Nishant on Brand India, should I say. My last question, Nishant, to you would be around, some of the policy making. The National Logistic Policy 2022 was announced a few months back. And then at the COP27, there was a huge commitment that Prime Minister Modi had given to, net zero. Do you think that all these policies are somewhere moving in the common direction of sustainability and making India a major powerhouse around this field of green mobility and green space per se?
Yeah, absolutely. Like as I was sharing the 500 gigawatt of renewable energy, the way solar costs have come down, India has the cheapest solar power in the world. And every country is now benchmarking India. Today, the global headquarters of International Solar Alliance is in NCR, where earlier it started with India and France together, but now multiple players are chipping in there. On the other hand, we categorically understand that how the market will span out for hydrogen. When we look at even biogas and other domains, we clearly see that the kind of opportunities which are there are very high. And the circular economy perspective comes in very clearly. So I think with circular economy focus, and with the focus on different policies, whether on manufacturing, on demand or supply side, and clearly seeing that technology becomes the primary focus driving this, I think as a country, we are taking a very inclusive kind of a mindset. So the inclusive mindset is something which will demonstrate India's leadership, not only for today, but all times to come. And that is what would be the key differentiator we all are looking forward to as we get along. And this would be based on multiple key parameters which redefine the economics and give us that trust moving forward. So different policies like logistics, making it easier, reducing the cost and other things would be the bedrock for becoming competitive going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think a big thank you for taking out time from Singapore between meetings. And thanks so much, Nishanji, for your comments on green mobility. With that, we have got Mr. Balji, who has just landed in Goa and is kind enough to join us from Goa. I'm not sure if I'm audible, Balji Saab. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, Chandraji.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
loud and clear.
Okay. I think video is not coming on for some reason. But anyways, I can start. There's no problem. There may be a little bit of noise in the background. You may please excuse me because the slide was little delayed.
No problem, Chandraji. I'm so glad that we could have you here today and that you took
Yeah.
time out from all your hectic schedule.
No, it's such a pleasure, to be with you. And so tell me, how do you want me to start?
Yes.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Thank you. So Chandraji, we are going to start on hospitality sector and we're going to dive straight into it. From your perspective as a leading member of the hotel industry, how would you rate the budget and its impact on the larger tourism sector? Over to you, Chandraji.
See, in the budget, if you really look at it, there is nothing really exciting for the hospitality industry. Except what they have said is that they will set up 50 new destinations across the country, which is long term, But in the short term, in terms of the hotel industry today faces is a little bit of a liquidity crisis till last year because of the 2 years of COVID. It really drained every single hotel and the debts accumulated. So the best thing they did was they provided what they call an emergency credit line. Emergency credit line is nothing but giving you more debt and getting you more into a debt trap and short-term debt. What we expected from the budget was long-term debt, and at a reasonable price. See, what the industry, if you really look at it in the NPAs which have come, is only because of short-term debts and the higher rate. Abroad, if you really look at it, the debts are, about 15 years to 25 years. Here, the debt is between, 7 years to 10 years. If you have a 7 years to 10 years, in India, any hotel takes about 3 years to start and then 2 years to stabilize. By that time, you have the repayments already kicked in. And then it's a short way of getting into an NPA situation. So in our pre-budget, we had said that hotels should be treated as an industry, and they are not treated as an industry. If you treat the industry, you'll get separate, maybe better tariffs for, electricity and a couple of other incentives which industry gets. But we are treated as commercial establishments. So if we treat it as commercial establishment, that is, some states have converted hotels into industry, but most have not. Even the BJP ruled states have not really done that. So that is the only disappointment. But at the same time, I would say the outlook is pretty good. This lasts for almost 1 year. Business has bounced back like nothing else. So regardless of the fact that government, whether it does something or not, we've learned to survive ourselves, and fight ourselves. So I think that is where we are heading, and outlook looks pretty good. If you really look at it, a couple of things is that the road network in our country has improved tremendously. So, and youngsters today at a drop of the hat want to go on holidays. It's become very easy through OTAs to make a hotel booking. Within a minute, you can get a hotel booking confirmed. You pick up your car and you pick up a family and you just drive off. There are very large number of long weekends in our country. We celebrate every single holiday of every single religion, caste, or creed. So if you have a holiday on Tuesday, you will take Monday as an off, and you have a 4 day vacation. So it's that's a boon which has come. Flights connectivity has improved a lot, and what they are saying is that they're going to add so many more airports, heliports. That will definitely also improve the connectivity, and that knowing Modi government may do it pretty fast. So that will have an effect. Definitely, it'll have an effect on our industry. It will definitely be a big boon to us. And one of the other things which has happened is that there are 26 million tourists, Indian tourists, who go abroad every year. Now that has stopped because, and people were saying that once the COVID gets over, these people will all start going abroad and they won't come to Indian destinations. But the destination abroad, because of the visa issues, because of the flight, various flights, expensive flights, and expensive hotel accommodations, that the Indian tourists will be staying in India also only for some time. And of course, there is a demand-supply mismatch. Now the industry is bouncing back. So people are now started investing in hospitality industry. By the time the new hotels come in, it will take at least 3 years. So we are in for a good time, hopefully, in the next 3 years. So that's what the industry outlook, to my mind, is. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Chandraji. I think that has put a lot of perspective, both the positive and the negative. You talked about the need for credit easing for your industry. But I think you are lucky that you have a finance minister who, in her shortest speech thus far, has mentioned tourism more than 10 times. So obviously the government seems to have your ear, and the industry of tourism seems to be very much in focus. So having said that, you obviously already spelled out some of the wish list. But in your sense, being such a experienced leader of this sector, you think India can really pull back the international tourists? I think today's newspaper had talked about the foreign tourist flow only being 75% of the pre-COVID level. So we still have some gap to make up at pre-COVID foreign tourist arrivals. So do you think that is going to go up going forward?
See, actually, India is a big destination for business travelers from abroad. And so tourism is a small part. But, with G20, the exposure that our country is going to get is tremendous. We're in the limelight right now. People are talking about it. There was a G20 golf tournament next to our hotel a few days back on the 5th. And now they're doing Hampi, some festivals. So all over the country, there are large number of events which are happening in this 1 year. So I think there's a very, very, great part which Modi has pulled off. And this won't due to this, people will come back to India. But regardless of that, as I mentioned to you, we are not really totally dependent on them. We today our domestic demand, and that is not only for the hospitality industry, but for all industries. Our demand, domestic demand, is driving growth. So here also, in fact, I've just landed in Goa, and I know we are running this hotel for the last 10 years. We have not entertained any charters because we felt that they were, low budget, large volumes. So we said we'll focus on the Indian market, and Indians are today, particularly after COVID, are exploring India, and they've found that there are lots of destinations available in India to see. One doesn't have to keep on going to Dubai every time, and see the same malls and come back. There are lots to do in India. And so I think, to my mind, we are in for a good run for the next couple of years.
Absolutely. I think everybody on the panel was smiling when you mentioned the malls of Dubai. Because I think most people are, like you said, dying to experience something new and something more fun. So absolutely, I think big cheers to Hampi and I think G20 in the year ahead. I think we all can make the most of it, visit your hotels and enjoy your hospitality, the renowned Indian hospitality, like you said.
That's true. Great. It is definitely a good time.
Yes.
And a lot of new destinations are coming up. And I think we are in for a good run.
In for a good run. Thank you so much, Andarji. With that, I'm going to pass on the baton and quickly shift gears to direct tax. The big bad world of direct tax is awaiting Sumit sir's comments. Sumitji, we'll dive straight into the topic. We were running a little behind schedule. Angel tax. I think there's a lot of talk since very long on angel tax. Firstly, if you could break down for some of our audience what angel tax is, and do you think that the extension of angel tax to non-residents would have an adverse impact on the startup ecosystem? Over to you, Sumit sir.
Thank you very much, sir. So basically, in a simplistic manner, what happens whenever there is an Indian resident who is subscribing to the shares of an Indian entity? So the value for subscription was that it cannot exceed the face value, and if at all Indian entity wants to recover premium along with the face justified basis some certain prescribed valuation methods. However, this particular law was not extended to non-residents. This was only applicable in case of a resident. And at the same time, if we talk about startups also, so in case of a startup, if there is any domestic investor who is subscribing to the shares of an Indian unlisted entity, then to the extent of share capital plus premium, they were not required to deal with the complexity of valuation or justify the premium, etc. However, this recent proposal, it has talked about that now this valuation requirement will be extended even in the case of a non-resident. So if it is getting extended in case of a non-resident and in case of startups, where a lot of funds have been infused by non-resident in Indian startups, probably that may lead to a bit of complication, because basically startup was first of all technology evolving, and it was always the commitment of Indian government to provide an ease of business, ease of registration, and a bit of relaxation on the tax front also. But when you are, taking away this benefit from non-resident, which of course will include those who are putting money in a startup as per the present law. So first of all, either they will be looking for other form of instrument, and every time they will have to grapple with the complexity of the valuations, which of course earlier they were not dealing with. So probably this can impact a bit of or their capability to invest. However, in our view, there should have been something, in fact, in the proposal in relation to giving some bit of relaxation to the startups entity, those who are putting money in startups. So probably they could have defined some limit as it is available for domestic, like 40-50 crore or 70 or 100 crore, as the case may be. However, this hasn't happened, and we have to see the final prints also and how it goes in that final print. Probably industry will be putting their representation after seeing this amendment or after seeing this proposal by the finance ministry. And just one take over this, and probably the intent of removing or intent of not removing the exemption for non-resident also could be, last year, there has been a regulatory development which provided that round tripping was somewhere permitted, where Indian putting money and that money coming from overseas jurisdiction to in India. So because of that benefit which was under regulatory, so they want to cut down the tax benefit and maybe some way want to structure it that way. So probably this could be the background or an intention behind such kind of an proposal. However, of course, as far as angel tax benefit goes, it was though earlier available for non-resident. So if they want to evolve more on the technology front, they should of course give some level of benefit, maybe depending upon the threshold or something, or some tweaking in the valuation method which is strictly applicable as of now. So these are the few things I think government should really consider. Otherwise, yeah, because I just happened to have a discussion with one of the players in startup industry, and he was just talking about reduction in the number of applications for startup over the years. So if such kind of law they're going to bring it, so in our view, I see few more dip in the number of application unless they provide some relaxation to non-resident investors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's unfortunate that maybe there was some mischief or maybe some misuse of the law by certain non-residents, due to which now this amendment has been brought in. But you make some valid points over there in terms of its impact on the larger ecosystem and the messaging that goes out to the broader market. With that, I'm going to shift gears onto the ultra high net worth individual segment. I think there has been a lot of press about some of the impact. So what aspects do, obviously the ultra high net worth individual segment or the rich segment have been impacted both positively and negatively. There's been a mixed bag. What, as per you, is the impact of this budget on them?
Yeah. So first, let me start with the positive move or a positive proposal, which is limiting the surcharge rate for an income exceeding 5 crore rupees to the extent of 25%, which was earlier 37%. So if someone who is in the bracket of 5 crore rupees, so their effective tax rate was getting to the extent of 42%. So now they have reduced to 25%. So that's a welcome move. And of course, this will give a bit of breather to the HNI. But that's the positive side I've just touched upon. But if I talk about the bit of law, or I'll not say it's a law, but slightly harsh on the part of the ministry, where they are restricting the deduction in case of capital gain to the extent of 10 crore rupees. So the law at present is like, suppose someone who has earned a long-term capital gain of say 50 crore rupees. So probably then that gain earner would have invested some money in the real estate, something similar to the amount of gain, and then they claim a deduction of that investment against the gain, and then they could have managed their tax liability. However, now government is proposing a restriction irrespective of the amount you are investing, even though you end up investing say 40 crore rupees, but your limit of deduction will be only just 10 crore rupees. So this is, of course, slightly harsh because, when they are talking about rupees 10 crore, what is the rational means all industries, means thinking or applying their thought, what is the rationale behind this 10 crore? Why not 15 crore? Why not 5 crore for that matter? Or is there any industry report which talks about on an average HNI invest to the average investment of an HNI is about just 10 crore rupees. So let us restrict to the extent of 10 crore rupees. But I don't see much of the rationale behind such kind of proposal, apart from, they gave some, they have reduced the surcharge and they have extended the tax exemption limit for new regime from 5 lakh to 7 lakh rupees subject to certain conditions. So probably, our government revenue or the exchequer bucket will, will be shrinking a bit because of that. So they wanted to make it up with some other avenues. So we were, at the budget stage or during the speech, we were wondering they would be recovering that deficit by, increasing GST rate and all these things. But probably this time government don't want to disturb their GST rates and all. And probably they want to recover from the HNIs. And that is why they have restricted 10 crore rupees without any possible rationale for it. And in my view, it takes a bit of a beating on the real estate also, because, some real estate who were, they had very, you can say the pricing of those was pretty significant. And, people were investing quite gradually in those to take the tax benefit. And it was certain properties was even exceeding, 25 crore rupees or more. But now if somebody sees that their benefit is going to be get restricted to 10 crores, so probably someone will be rethinking in terms of whether they want to reinvest. So, but as a word of maybe a bit of, advice one can say that, one can think of if you are already having or you are seeing your capital gain occurring. So do it in this year, invest within this year, before this, new proposal gets implemented by the parliament. One can, sort it out their issues within this year so that, they can still claim bit of benefit, whatever available in this little period of time. But yeah, in a nutshell, it's pretty harsh and without any rationale, I'll say.
Yeah, so I think most of the people in South Delhi and South Bombay would be probably paying up a little bit of a higher tax bill. And maybe if you can hurry up affairs before 31st March, as Sumit sir said, maybe you can save some of that tax. So lastly, very briefly, Sumit sir, would you like to share some of the trust taxation loopholes which have been plugged in the budget? What, as per you, is your views on the trust taxation bit, which I think there have been a couple of changes? Very quickly, if you'd like to just share with the audience.
Sure, sir. So first, one line from my side. So while drafting this finance bill, probably our finance minister must have been accompanied by some good advisors, and they must have told her these are the typical loopholes or the typical planning which has been happening in the trust. So please plug those, and so on. So one of them has been, if you are having a layers of trust, like I'm having one trust, second trust, and the third trust, and where I foresee that I may not be able, because typically in a trust taxation, you get an exemption against the receipts if you are able to apply those receipts to the extent of 85% in a year. So at times what happens that if one trust is falling short of that limit of 85%, so they used to, donate or put money in their own subsequent trust and claim this payment as a application of basically fund and try to achieve that 85% mark. But however, now this kind of planning, now they're trying to cut away by saying that they will restrict the benefit to the extent of 85%. So for example, if one trust is putting say 10 lakh rupees in another trust, so now the application will be considered as only say 8.5 lakh rupees against 10 lakh rupees, which is 85% of 10 lakhs and not the full. So that's the one plug they are trying to put in. But still, if I give another view, so that's if one trust is putting money in another trust. So it's a fund movement happening from one trust to another, and that trust, could have applied that fund. They are also required to apply that fund towards whatever eligible investment they are supposed to. So in a ways, this ultimately the funds gets channelized outside the trust, may not be the trust fund, but of course through the trust too. So this is slightly not as harsh as capital gain tax restriction, but yeah, probably now they are just cutting the avenues one by one. So that is the most important one. I just thought I'll put a bit of light on.
Thank you so much, Sumit sir, for that. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. We'll very quickly shift to indirect tax. We have here Nitish sir, who's joining us. I see a very glittering background behind you, Nitish sir. What, as per you, I mean, we've talked about a lot of positive as well as negative changes which have introduced. In your view, are there any misses on the indirect tax front of things that could have been done where the Honorable Finance Minister missed out? Over to you, Nitish sir. I think you may need to unmute. Yeah.
Thank you, Raghuji. I'm glad I was listening to the panelist and my dear friend Sumit, and the reference to the indirect taxes coming before the direct tax. It's music to ears, where I feel that indirect tax is being viewed as a business than a mere transaction. And if I can pass over and come more closer to you, the moment this happens, it would be like a sugar dissolves in water and makes the water sweet. In terms of the positive and affirmations to the business and the finance bill, there's been a retrospective coverage to the international merchant trading transaction of the warehouse coast, as well as high sea sale is now covered under Schedule 3, thereby activities which are neither supply of goods or services. It has been clarified that the amendment shall be applicable with retrospective effect from July 2017. However, where tax has already been collected for the prior period, no refund shall be available. Constitutionality of such denial or refund may be tested before the court of law. But there's been another, affirmation in terms of decriminalization of certain offenses, and this is in Section 132, which provides for arrest in respect of certain specified offenses and constantly being invoked by the tax authorities, for instance, relating to issue of fake invoice, wrong availment of input tax credit, etc. The proposed amendment seeks to decriminalize certain offenses which are trivial in nature. However, the larger issue here is with respect to invoking the powers to arrest is pending before the 3-member bench of the Apex Court, wherein the powers of the commissioner to arrest without issuance of FIR or a show cause notice under Section 74 is pending for determination. A section has been inserted, and the new section is 158 A, which is about sharing of information across the regulator. The proposed amendment empowers the government to share the information furnished by the taxpayer on the GST portal with all tax as well as non-tax regulatory authorities. To give you an example, returns 1, 3B, 5, 6, annual returns, you name it, and it's there. Generation of electronic invoices, e-bills, and so on and so forth. And this may be subject matter of indirect scrutiny by other non-GST regulatory authorities. A clarification in terms of Central Sales Tax Appellate Authority will no longer be functional. All the cases will be transferred to CESTAT. As such, this has been non-functional for over a year. What businesses would have preferred is there was an anticipation of voluntary compliance schemes under customs to reduce the pending disputes. There was an anticipation for GST tribunal being constituted and corresponding change in the provisions, outlaying the map with more judicial members. We all know the report from a group of ministers have been submitted and decision is yet to be taken on the same. This is, one of my views, which I probably take it in terms of the way GST came into being in 2017 and the theme of the GST, which were being pushed, was in terms of the the credit, the ITC mechanism. So I would probably say that the entire aspect of block credit would need a greater deliberation with regard to relevance of such blockage. On one hand, the definition of ITC is wide enough to cover all expenses that are incurred for the business use, while on the other, there are provisions to deny credit on select supplies. In effect, there is a disconnect in the manner of extending deductions under the income tax law and the ITC credit benefit under GST for the same set of expenses. Having said that, the disallowance of ITC on the CSR expenditure seems to be a bit of radar. Considering that the Section 135 of the Companies Act, it is mandatory to incur specific amount towards CSR. However, same is in line with the Income Tax Act, where deduction of CSR expenditure is allowed. If I take the simile out of it, there has been ESG, and that's something which businesses are aligning themselves in terms of their visions, and their growths. It would be interesting to see as to how the government takes it up in terms of the ESG. My personal view on the ESG also is that whereas the generation, not to put the numbers, but just in terms of explanation, the generation below 40 is much more aware of the ESG, and they're willing to put a step forward in that. So these are the points to ponder in the corridors of power, Raghuji.
No, absolutely. I think all of these points are very valid. That if you are doing CSR or ESG is becoming a core focus area for companies going forward, why is the input credit on that CSR expense not being allowed? I think this has again caught a lot of media attention, and a lot of channels have been talking about this. So point well taken, Nitish sir. Any other point that you would like to highlight about some of the you talked about a lot of changes, but some of the kinks that have been ironed out, which have been niggling industry, which have been troubling industry, and now the Honorable Finance Minister was able to iron out those kinks before we move to the next section.
I feel the indirect tax proposal aligned with key strategic priority of the government, including push to make in India, affirmative actions on climate changes, and ease of doing business. That's what they've been saying it for such a long time. And I look at in that direction, things are moving. Because if you look at in terms of the customs, the extension of several exemption notification due to expire in March 23, and exclusion of such sunset clauses of exemptions under FTA, which is free trade agreement, or the foreign trade policies, etc., would be appreciated by the industry. This amendment was introduced in 2021, which provided that all conditional exemption notifications shall be valid only up to March 23. This created a doubt amongst the taxpayer as to whether certain special duty benefits availed under the FTA or export incentive schemes under the foreign trade policy can be unilaterally withdrawn by enforcing such sunset clause. This position in this regard was somewhat clarified through the TRU, along with the finance bill in 2020, mentioning that the sunset date stipulated under section 25(4) of the Customs Act shall not apply to exemption granted under the trade agreement or concessions given under the foreign trade policy. In specific, if I could refer the advance authorization. But the legislative backing to this clarification was absent, which has now been proposed in the bill. However, I feel that it would be interesting to note that the proposed amendment may create an ambiguity for such exemption notifications, which exempts both basic customs duty as well as the IGST, given that the clause G of the proposed second proviso keeps the IGST exemption outside the scope of applicability of the sunset clause. Well, it remains to be seen whether IGST would continue to be exempt even when basic customs duty exemption on such goods have expired by virtue of this sunset clause. I also feel that, one of the sections, which is section 127C of the Act, it proposes to amend by insertion of a new subsection, which is 8A, to provide time limit of 9 months for Settlement Commission to dispose of an application. It is extended by further period of 3 months for reason to be recorded in writing. In terms of compliance, one of the measures which has been taken under the impact of that, which I feel is the threshold of time limit of 3 years has been prescribed for the furnishing monthly annual returns and statement. Earlier, there was no time limit to furnish returns, and taxpayer would furnish belated returns, with light pay of late fees or the interest. However, the returns older than 3 years would henceforth be locked for filing. This impact would be from litigation perspective, as the time limit to initiate an assessment or audit would be impacted basis this limit. Raghuji.
Thank you so much, Nitishji. I think some technical points, some you've elaborated on certain sections about international law and permission. So yeah, I think a lot has been covered. With that, we're going to quickly move forward to Jagruti ma'am and the last section on corporate law. Jagruti ma'am, in terms of IBC, which is the Insolvency Bankruptcy Code, and restructuring, there were a few changes that were introduced in the budget. Do you think that these changes are sufficient and would assist the revival of insolvent entities? I think every day in the papers we read about some insolvency case. It's obviously carrying a lot of public interest. So your views on that. Over to you, Jagruti ma'am.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. So earlier budget, we have seen that since 2017, when the IBC law came into the practice, till now, we have given a good amendments in terms of allowability of losses in the event where the shareholding pursuant to resolution plan has been changed beyond 51%. Also, there is a welcome move that MAT provisions, which allows only lower of the losses or a higher of the losses or the depreciation, that has been amended in case of insolvency matters. However, what used to happen is that in the resolution plan or in any restructuring, when you have mergers, amalgamation or anything, there was a provision under section 170A of the Income Tax Act that the successor entity is eligible to file the modified return within the period of 6 months from the date of final order from either NCLT or from the adjudicating authority under IBC, which is again NCLT basically. But there was a lacuna in a sense that no direction was given to assessing officer on whom he should do the assessment. So this budget has brought in that provisions. It has been proposed that the provision has to be put in section 170A with respect to giving a guidance to the assessing officer that he should assess all the pending cases or the order which has been finalized in favor of the successor entity. What still remains to be addressed is that in case of demerger, where pursuant to resolution plan, or if there is a restructuring happening pursuant to demerger, what will happen in case of a demerged entity? Because in that case, demerged entity remains surviving entity. No direction has been given for modified return to be filed in case of demerged entity, as well as no amendment has been brought in with respect to assessment of such demerged entity. We'll have to see the fine prints if they bring in that lacuna also been plugged, right? Another welcome move is with respect to insolvency professionals. Under section 276A, there was a provision that a prosecution action can be taken against the insolvency professionals who are doing insolvency cases. That was little fearsome that a person who is not at the helm of the affairs of the company, he is just doing the process which has been directed for running the company and making a resolution plans or liquidation of the company. He or she was being prosecuted. That has been removed now. So that is a welcome move in IBC.
Thank you so much.
Another restructuring angle, as Sumit,
Please go ahead, Jagruti ma'am. You were saying
go ahead. Yeah, with respect to this, Sumitji has already pointed out with respect to restructuring options where section 54 and 54F has already plugged that loophole. It was not a loophole, but it was a structuring option. Yeah.
Absolutely. Some changes have also been introduced to rationalize ease of doing business for NBFC sector in the budget. What are your views on that?
There are two good amendments which have been brought in for NBFC sector. One is with respect to section 94B, which speaks about thin capitalization and therefore the allowability of the interest in hands of the NBFC, where the borrowing has been taken from non-resident associated enterprise. Earlier, these NBFCs were not eligible to claim that exemption, but as if they are doing the functions of banking and insurance, and therefore now it has been allowed. That is a very welcome move. Second thing, earlier only two kind of NBFCs were allowed to claim the deduction under section 43B DA for the interest paid by the assessee. So it was only for deposit taking NBFCs and systematically important non-banking, non-deposit taking undertakings. Now it has been stated that all specified NBFCs will be eligible to take the interest exemption, interest deduction under section 43B subsection DA. That are two welcome moves.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think the last question is what I think the finance minister honorable had raised in her speech or alluded to in her speech regarding the central data processing center. You know, the finance minister had mentioned that for faster response on the forms filed on the MCA portal and to enhance the ease of doing business, she is going to bring about this central data processing center, similar to what we have in income tax. Do you think that that is a positive change and that's going to help corporate restructurings?
See, basically, I can say that the central data processing system, where all the data for a particular company, industry, or whatever is the entity will be processed at one center and will be passed on to all other departments, so that assessee do not have to keep on doing that regular filings, etc. And everything is done at one click. However, that is really a welcome move if it is implemented correctly. And we have seen from the past experience that if you see this portal of LLP or MCA or GST, it still shows the hiccups. Even the new income tax portal, which has been revived, that is not functioning in a proper manner. So it has to be time tested that whether this central data processing unit also functions well. But definitely, I mean, the move is really good. Let's see how it works out.
Yes, I think a lot of petitions and writ petitions, as a matter of fact, there was something in the Kerala writ petition, Kerala High Court who had passed regarding hard copy filings in case the MCA portal is not working. So definitely, I think there are some hardships people are facing with some of these, steps which are being taken. Maybe some initial teething problems are there, but hopefully, I think long term, like you said, this will be helpful for industry.
Yes. Also, with respect to restructuring, two things which are yet to be addressed. One is a long pending issue with respect to outbound merger, where the Companies Act 2013 also has made a provision for outbound merger, and RBI has also come up with the rules with respect to how outbound mergers will be effective. However, income tax has not taken this view. It still continues with the merger of Indian entities and the exemption pertaining thereto. So looking at the global industry and the size which we are catering to, this needs to be addressed. Secondly, there is a trend right now of reverse flipping, where foreign entities are going to shift their domicile. They are wishing to shift their domicile to India. The rules with respect to that and how that can be eased out, that also is required to be addressed so far. That is what is my view on that. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think those are very, very helpful points. We are going to quickly shift to the Q&A section. There are a couple of questions which are there. If I can request Madhusudan ji to take the first question, which says, how do you compare this year's budget to the previous years in terms of COVID-19? I think industry has been talking a lot of changes, post-COVID. I think some of the other panelists had talked about the debt issues which have creeped up, or some of the hardship people faced during COVID. Do you think that this budget, as compared to the earlier budgets, was a little different? The finance minister had a little more room in terms of managing her fiscal deficit and other matters. Over to you, Madhusudan ji.
Yeah, thank you. I think this budget was like a normal budget. This had no past of the COVID-19 on it. So they have taken a lot of capital expenditure and other room they have got to spend money to improve the condition of the economy. In the last budget, since the pandemic was still not fully recovered, so they were cautious in doing so. But in this budget, I think they have gone all out to improve the economy. And this is like a pre-COVID budget, I would say. So there is nothing which shows that we are still in the COVID state.
Absolutely. I think that is very true. I think the confidence with which government is moving ahead says a lot. There's one more question for you, Madhusudan ji.
Okay.
Please,
Okay,
I think you wanted to say something. Please go ahead, Madhusudan ji.
No, I want to leave. I have to go somewhere. So I'm just seeking your permission to go.
Sorry. So this will be the last question, sir.
Okay, yeah, I'll take it. No problem.
This is about the question says, could underexplored textile markets be explored further to support the worker and the industry in a whole? What are the measures that need to be taken? I'm not sure underexplored, whether they're talking about new markets like maybe Vietnam, or whether they're talking about underexplored textile markets within India. But your thoughts on those?
Even I would not understand. But see, Vietnam, Bangladesh, they are doing well because they have certain priorities in tax in Europe. And so they are more export-oriented markets. So their consumption would be locally lower than what they are exporting. In India, it's more Indian-oriented market. So like 80-85% of the product is consumed in India. Only 15% would be approximately getting exported. There it would be more or less reverse. It would be like 20-80 or 25-75, 20-25 in the local and 75-80% in the export. So they are also coming out and they want to give employment. So this is the best way to give employment without putting too much of capital, which I told earlier also. So India also now can focus on this and get a lot of employment because China is going to create a huge space in textile, which India can take over. First, all the orders were going to China. Now China has a limitation and their internal consumption will go up also with the prosperity. So their exports will decline in textiles.
Thank you so much, Madhusudan ji, and thanks for your
time. Thank you so much.
Sorry,
I have to leave.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. We'll ask Sumit sir to take the last question, which is what are the important points that a small business owner must consider as a result of this budget? Over to you, Sumit sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, as far as small businessman concerned, there is one MSME provision. However, this MSME is providing two things. One is an amendment in section 43B, which provided that now the payment to the MSME will be based upon the deduction for MSME payment will be based upon the actual payments, and accrual will not be available. So probably in case of a small businessman, where now they can see their better turnaround in terms of their cash flow, because probably someone may not want to take an exposure on the on their deductions and all, and probably they want to move their cash flow more swiftly. So probably that is then this is an important key way in this particular budget, I'll say, as far as the small business segment is concerned.
Thank you, Sumit sir. Nitish sir, there's one last question which says, what does this budget mean for rural India? How would the people living in rural and suburban areas be impacted? Over to you, Nitish sir, for this question. Nitish sir, you're on mute.
All right, thank you. I would probably say that, from a ruler or, an MSME perspective, and take that leap forward from my colleague Sumit, is there's a composition levy which is specific to the states, and where the turnovers in terms of, apart from the northeastern states and other states, it's 1.5 CR. That's something which can be looked at, and there has been an amendment into it. If you look at the proviso to it, earlier it was for services only, and now it is for goods too. So that means to say that you can probably go through the e-commerce operators too for within the state, and that's something which one can look into for the composition levy for small businesses. You're on the mute.
Sorry, we always end up doing this. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and all the members of the audience for joining us today. It was a pleasure having all of you here, and thank you for spending time on the union budget with us. All the best, and God bless. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.